Alrighty, so it's Wednesday, which you know what that means. It's time to do a News of the Week episode. And I know this year I haven't been doing a News of the Week episode every single week, mainly because there are just some weeks where there's not enough news in the MLS news cycle for me to worthy to do a News of the Week episode. But with that being said, as we get ready to start the playoffs again, and once we get into the off season, you better believe I'm not only going to be doing a News of the Week episode every single midweek, but I'm also going to be doing on the weekends because there's going to be a ton of news that is going to be happening once the offseason begin with all the transfer signings and rumors and trades that is going on around MLS. But with that being said, unfortunately, we have to open up a very sad news that we heard a couple of days ago as FC Cincinnati midfielder Marco Angulo sadly passed away following a car accident that he was involved a couple of weeks ago while he's on loan with LDU Quito. And yeah, just very sad to see considering he has a lot of potential when he was with Cincinnati. I'm not quite sure why they decided to not keep him and just kind of send him on loan instead. But yeah, he had a lot of potential. I thought he was a guy that could be sold off for a certain amount of money if FC Cincinnati decided to move on from him. And now it's not going to happen because of this tragic death. And it's also worthy to note that we have seen some tragic death with soccer young soccer player this year around within MLS and even in MLS Next Pro. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw Trent Holden sadly pass the way for from the Philadelphia Union to the starting goalkeeper of that team. And yeah, we just a couple of weeks ago we saw another their player that sadly passed away, and one that it's even worse the fact that it happened in terms of a car accident as well. And yeah, certainly my condolences and certainly my thoughts and prayers toward his family and certainly people that is closely related to him, and also FC Cincinnati as well, because this has got to be devastating if you're Cincinnati, not only losing a player that you can sell off for a big amount of money, but just tragically passed away from the car accident that I heard reports saying that it was actually preventable. Now, moving on in terms of the next news. So, MLS is actually investigating a physical altercation involving Taylor Twellman during an Inter Miami match, and that's probably explaining why Taylor Twellman and Jake Zivins wasn't calling game three of the first round matchup between Inter Miami versus Atlanta United, because this year, most Inter Miami match are always called by Jake Zivins and Taylor Twellman for the better or worse, and that it was kind of surprised that it wasn't them in game number three, especially in a pivotal game like that. I believe it was Steve Cangelosi and David Hickenbottom that was calling that game, and apparently, from what I heard, it seems like he was involving a physical altercation between him and one of the producer that is, and we'll see whether or not if there's going to be some finding and whether or not if Taylor Twellman could be facing some suspension as a resort sort of that. And Taylor Twellman, he's been a very polarized kind of character within the MLS community, especially in the broadcasting community. He has had his haters and has his naysayer out there. In my opinion, I know there are a lot of people that doesn't like Taylor Twellman in terms of the commentating style that he has, but I don't kind of mind him. Yes, he can be some very obnoxious at time, and especially when calling Inter Miami games as well, and maybe toward a little bit biased towards some team. But he definitely bring in the energy, which is something that I've seen in other broadcaster on the Apple TV throughout the season, where I just feel like, man, they sound really boring, and they doesn't sound like they're interested whatsoever. And that, yeah, that's something that at least Taylor Twelman, of course, bring. And again, whether you like him or not, this should be very interesting, and it's big too, consider it's involving one of the lead commentator, one of the lead color commentator for MLS as part of this Apple TV deal. Now, the Chicago Fire have named Greg Broughton as their new sporting director. I gotta say, this is probably the first time in a while where we have the sporting director and the head coach of the same team goes by the same name. And what's even interesting is the name that it was spelled is exactly the same as Greg Berhalter. But all kidding aside, this is a guy that, from what I heard, he been been a long time sporting director, especially in England. His last job was actually with Blackburn Rovers, so something tells me I don't know if he was involved in the mess that was between Blackburn and also Orlando City. And if that is the case, that's not really a good sign to see if you're a Chicago Fire fan. But certainly, you just hope that things would be better, and you hope that the two Gregs will eventually right the ship. And for the sake of Fire fans, and even myself as a neutral, I really want the Chicago Fire to succeed. I think there's no team in MLS, maybe besides the San Jose Earthquakes, deserve to have a team that is very successful and at least make the playoffs. Because again, the Fire, it's been just a decade long fertility, and that you got to say eventually it's gonna have to come to an end. Eventually, the curse has to end with this team currently in the longest active playoff drought, and a team that have not made the playoffs since 2017. I mean, it's hard to believe that it's been now 7 full years and 8 full seasons since the Chicago Fire has last made it to the playoffs. And then MLS Disco has also announced that Hector Herrera will be fined and also suspended 3 games if he decide to ever return to MLS. Now it's kind of interesting in terms of the fine. I don't know if that of course carry over now that he is a free agent, but yeah, it's kind of interesting that if he ever come back to MLS and if there's another team looking to try to sign Hector Herrera, yeah, he's not going to be available with that team immediately because he has to serve that suspension. Kind of similar to what we saw with Clint Dempsey and how Clint Dempsey has been serving that U.S. Open Cup suspension ever since he had that infamous game where he ripped up the notebook of the referee, and to this day he is still suspended from participating in any U.S. Open Cup game. And if there is a case where he might be coming back and joining an amateur team in the U.S. Open Cup, he's not even able to play because he's still suspended in that competition as well. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. We'll see whether or not if Hector Herrera is gonna stay in MLS. I mean, there's already rumor that maybe he's gonna go back to Liga MX and finish his career there. And there's also talk that maybe another team is looking to try to get him. But yeah, if another team is looking to get him, they gotta remember they can't play him straight away. They have to have him serve that 3 game suspension. And for those of you that don't know why he got suspended, yeah, it's because of that spitting incident that he had toward the referee. And yeah, you simply can't do that. It's almost the same amount of games that I think that Mateus Vera got, or not Mateus Vera, Ryan Vera, got the wrong Vera there for a second, but the same incident that Brian Vera got suspended after he was caught throwing the spit toward Michael Boxall. And yeah, it's safe to say that Minnesota fans still have not forgot about that, especially when we saw it in the second game of the first round matchup between those two teams. Now, moving on. So, the Columbus Crew, Steven Moreira, has won the Defender of the Year. And by the way, I forgot to also put this note as well. But Christian Kalina, of course, won the Goalkeeper of the Year. Now, in terms of Defender of the Year, this year there wasn't really any standout kind of defender that I would say compared to previous season. I mean, I thought one of the Inter Miami defender was gonna win it. Jordi Alba was actually on that list. I thought he was gonna win that because of the profile that he has. And even though I know Inter Miami, their defense has been an absolute mess, as I mentioned yesterday in my moving forward series episode. But he's been very solid in that spot, and I thought he was going to win that outright. But certainly, Steven Moreira, I think he deserved to win Defender of the Year. He's a very good defender. Not only need that, but also can push upfield, because that's the thing about Columbus, of the fact that all their players, they can definitely has the license to go upfield, especially with the wing backs as well. They have that option to go forward. And I think that might be kind of the reason why he won Defender of the Year, where he's not only versatile when it comes to shutting things down, but also he offer threat on the attacking end as well. Though I don't know if that's kind of the thing that they were awarding for a player that won Defender of the Year. Usually, when you're awarded Defender of the Year, you're part of a guy that is just an absolute rock at the back and just kind of shut down things. And I also think that maybe part of the reason why the Crew was part of that upset against the Red Bulls, they didn't have Steven Moreira in any of those games against the Red Bulls. And I think it kind of showed how that defense was definitely weakened to a part that they were, as I mentioned, part of that upset that they were involved with them and the New York Red Bulls. Which also, by the way, you remember when I made that video talk about the biggest upset I've seen in recent year? I can't not believe I forgot about that game. I probably should have put that game on it because that I think that game, could consider to be probably the biggest upset we have seen in recent memories, and it's kind of sad the fact that that game is going to be a little bit overshadowed because of the big upset that we had between Inter Miami and Atlanta United. Now, moving on in terms of next news and talk about some USL news because I know this is an MLS channel, but it's always interesting to talk about some USL news, especially in the USL Championship. Now, Memphis 901 is set to transfer their naming rights to Santa Barbara. So what that means is that it feels like Memphis 901 is going to be relocating. They're going to be now becoming the Santa Barbara Sky, and it's kind of sad to see that whenever you see a team that basically is relocate to another team. And from what I heard, the reason why that is the case is because Memphis 901 they couldn't really find a soccer stadium. They couldn't really quite get the stadium deal done. And with the way that the USL have really heavily emphasized that we are now moving away from having these teams play in a baseball stadium, specifically a minor league baseball stadium. They need to have their own soccer stadium, and many of these teams have tried to do so. Memphis 901 has tried really hard to try to get that stadium deal done. Couldn't do so. So yeah, it's almost like the league almost kind of forced them to get it done, and also not to mention they were also losing a lot of money as well. And yeah, with that kind of as a combination, it was like the writing was on the wall that it seems like they might be relocated to somewhere else, and Santa Barbara is the place to be, which kind of interesting because Santa Barbara originally they were supposed to award a USL League One team. The Santa Barbara Sky was supposed to be a team that plays in the USL League One, but now it seems like they're not, instead going to be playing in the USL Championship, which means that there's going to be now 5 teams that's going to be in California in the USL Championship. Like literally almost half of the Western Conference is going to base in California. And I remember when people mentioned how when there was supposed to be going to be 5 teams that's going to be happening in MLS, and people were really unhappy about that because it feels like there's oversaturation in the region, even though California is the most popular state in the country. Though again, I wonder if they're gonna have that discussion with the USL Championship as well, where where people feel like 5 teams in California is just way too much, especially with the way that there are teams that is pretty close within the region as well, and it's not kind of like spread around like what we see when MLS was trying to put 5 MLS team based out of California. But yeah, very interesting to see how this of course go. And again, it's unfortunate the fact that Santa Barbara got an expansion team by this way, but we see this happen a lot in the lower league. The reason why we haven't seen it in MLS is because of all the ridicule that we have seen before, especially with the Save the Crew movement. You don't really get as much movement, at least in the lower league. This is not the first time we have seen a team that have moved to somewhere else. I think a famous example was when Fresno FC was in the USL Championship, and then they basically eventually moved to Monterey Bay. Well, they didn't really indirectly move there. They actually dissolved to a point where eventually I think Monterey Bay kind of bought that naming rights if I remember, and now they're setting up a team down there, and this is an example of it. Though again, it'll also be a thing that I think now that there might be another USL team that's going to be happening in the Eastern Conference, which I think there will be because I heard Jacksonville Armada is one of those teams that's going to be joining the league relatively soon as well. Now, speaking of USL Championship, so Sacramento has unanimously passed the Republic Stadium deal at the rail yard. So obviously, there's been a lot of talks about Sacramento Republic building themselves a stadium near downtown, and it makes sense because the current stadium that they play at, I've been to that stadium many times, and it's near the Cal Expo ground. It's very bare bone. I mean, it's pretty clear that they need a new stadium, and obviously with the MLS Hope, unfortunately, died out a couple of years ago. They are trying to propose the stadium deal, although it's going to be less extravagant compared to what we've seen before. But when I look at in terms of the plan, it's actually a pretty nice stadium. Though I will say that I was kind of surprised that they didn't decide to build some shades and at least build partially a roof because yeah, Summer in Sacramento is no joke whatsoever. It is really hot, and I'm surprised they decided to kind of build an open air stadium as well. But that being said, this is definitely good news for Sacramento. And again, there's still a lot of question about whether or not if Sacramento will ever get an MLS team. I mean, it's getting to a point where I've even mentioned Republic fans, they don't even want to go to MLS. The fact that MLS have screwed the city over so many times, it's gotten to a point where if MLS does decide to come back knocking on the door to try to award Sacramento team, I don't think those people in Sacramento will really want to accept that because they know that the league has kind of backstabbed them so many times and that it's getting to a point where maybe the ship has sailed. Though I'm hoping that it's not the case. I've been one of the big advocates to hope to see a team in or see an MLS team in Sacramento, and we came so close a couple of years ago, only for their owner to decide to back out and unfortunately not getting a team as well. And again, we'll see whether or not if it's going to be the case in the near future, especially with with the league could expand as much as 36 team in the near future. Now, speaking of soccer stadium, there's actually now hope in terms of the economic build that is part to build the Rev Stadium in Everett. So we know about what happened in terms of that bill. It basically did not passed back in August. That was a huge setback in terms of the Revs finally building a soccer specific stadium near the Boston area. But now there's reports saying that they're looking to trying to move to revise the bill and maybe trying to pass it again. And that's good news too, because I think it's safe to say that New England is probably one of the last team in MLS that clearly needs to move out of their multi-purpose stadium and their cavernous multi-purpose stadium. I mean, I think between them and maybe Chicago and even some extents to Charlotte FC as well, they need to move on from their stadium, and that we'll see whether or not if this deal the new revised bill will be passed. I mean, if it is passed, it is a huge win for the refs who has just been battling year after year in terms of trying to get this specific stadium built around the Boston area. Even the Kraft Group has gone all out when it comes to trying to push this deal being done. And then finally, the Canadian Soccer Association have released more findings in terms of the independent investigation involving the drone spy incident, and they're also continuing to do an organizational change. Not surprised, consider again, from what we have known in terms of the drone spying situation, or you can call the soccer version of Spygate that's gone on for the past couple of years. Yeah, it's very ugly. It's a huge black eye to the CSA, which this organization. If you thought the U.S. Soccer Federation was corrupt, the CSA basically said, "Hold my beer," and we're gonna just decided to conduct spying activity as a new level of corruption that is going on within the organization, and hopefully eventually they will sort this out and we'll move on from the old regime and create a new one because again, the CSA right now they have done a lot of mess and has involved tons of controversy. This recent one is pretty much right up top in terms of some of the worst scandal that has gone on with this soccer organ association. And then I did say lastly, but we did have one more news to talk about, and this is just kind of a reminder that the U.S. is going to be playing against Jamaica in the quarterfinal of the Nations League. Leg one is actually going to be tomorrow. It's going to be in Jamaica and in Kingston, but leg number two will be on U.S. soil, and it's going to be at City Park in St. Louis. Although actually, it's not called City Park anymore. It's called Energizer Park. Though again, like whenever a team decide to rename the stadium. It's gonna take a while for me to kind of remember the new name that St. Louis, of course, have chose. But yeah, that is gonna be at City Park, and that this will also be the first two games that Maurizio Pochettino will actually be playing in a competitive game. The last couple of ones were friendly, and those friendly were not pretty whatsoever. So this could be a good first test to see how Maurizio Pochettino team will do, and that this is where the players got to step up because I think as much as I know people is going to be instantly blame Maurizio Pochettino if the U.S. Do not do well against Jamaica. You got to remember he's still brand new to this team, and that now it's really up to the players to play up to the standards. And if the players are not playing up to the standard, there's got to be some huge question mark of whether or not if the group that currently is right now and the current young core that this team has kind of built built for the past couple of years isn't even good enough to compete with some of the best team. And I unfortunately have to say no right now from what have seen. I'm really hoping that they can prove me wrong, but this is kind of the beginning, and we'll see whether or not that whether things will be good at least in these first two games, the first real test to see what Maurizio Pochettino can bring to this team. And if they don't in case if they don't, of course, move on into the semifinal in the CONCACAF Nations League, and they somehow lose to Jamaica. Oh boy, I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of doomers that's going to come out and immediately blame Pochettino, even though I think the hard look of this team has got to be in terms of the current group and whether or not is we might not be it might not be good enough in terms of really competing, especially in the international stage that we were going to see in just two years time. Actually, not even 2 years time, but now less than 2 year time with the World Cup happening here in North America and here in American soil in July of 2026. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for this News of the Week episode. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these news, and if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below as always. But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.